Hello, this is the first in a series of slideshows that I will be putting up on Moodle for English 101 students about issues we cover in the course. The title of this particular presentation, which will result in a variety of exercises we do in class and ultimately a quiz you'll take, is Levels of Discourse, a term which I will define here with you. And the purpose of it is to explore why your college papers shouldn't read like your texts to your squad. Have a sense of already. The first and most obvious point to make about levels of discourse is that American English is not the exact same language in all contexts. In other words, with your friends, you probably talk a lot differently with, say, your grandparents or with your pastors, if indeed you have them, and other figures of authority. Chances are you curse less with the last two groups of people, and you understand that it's more appropriate for you to speak in a formal fashion than you probably would with your very best friend. Likewise, even your parents are doing the same thing. They probably speak differently to their close friends, who I guess I imagine smiling together wearing catalog clothes, than they do at work. And likewise, when you are employed after your college experience, it's likely that your manner of expression at work will differ somewhat from the way you would speak again to your level of profanity. But the point is more like this. There are different levels of formality in the way we speak to one another in different settings, in the way we write papers or messages of other kinds. Um, and these differences in formality are sometimes referred to as levels of discourse. And one would say that a rap was at a lower level of discourse than, for instance, a speech at the United Nations. It's not that one is necessarily better than the other based on level of formality. More formal language is not necessarily more persuasive or more interesting. In fact, often quite the opposite is true. But it certainly is true that you wouldn't go to the United Nations Security Council to talk about whether or not the United Nations should send soldiers into a certain country and expect there to be bars and hooks. Um, and if the man on the right of your screen, uh, General Colin Powell, came to a concert, uh, you wouldn't really find him as nearly as interesting as chances are a hip hop artist you would find. Again, just to be abundantly clear here, formal does not mean better, but it is a requirement of college discourse. And here we have Jay-Z on the right, one of my favorite rappers. Sometimes a rapper is more eloquent, persuasive, and powerful in his or her speech giver. You see, this guy is at the board with a spreadsheet on the screen and everybody's fallen asleep. Sometimes a higher level of discourse doesn't mean that the words chosen are more eloquent or impressive. It just means that they are more formal. One of the things we will additionally be working on is writing dynamically within the appropriate level of discourse for college writing. I have a desire to help you succeed here, and one of the ways would be for you not to write things that are terribly boring and put your professors to sleep. So just as different levels of discourse are appropriate in different speaking situations, likewise, different levels of discourse are required in different writing situations. Um, a very simple example, you would think about audience here. If one of you would ever send the following text message, I'm imagining this guy drinking his coffee is somehow asking the question, "Bae, you up?" Much more appropriate for him to send to his girlfriend, and here she is with her own cup of coffee, than it would be to your professor. And here's a picture of me, and for the record, I will not be answering any texts from students that read "bay you up." So don't bother sending. When you write for college, your level of discourse needs to rise to the occasion. But of course, the question is, how do students do that? How on earth would you make your level of discourse rise in the context of college paper? Highest level of discourse was thought to belong to the royalty. The royalty are the people who hold the situation of highest class, and they are historically what was called arbiters of taste. But most of us, particularly Americans, um, we use a language far less formal in every context than the so-called Queen's English. Um, this level of formality being different and its idiosyncrasy. And that level of language, the one which is lower than the most formal version of English, is called the vernacular. Vernacular is the language or dialect spoken by the ordinary people in a particular country or region. Different age groups in America often have different vernacular expressions. I'm guessing your grandparents spoke a slang, which is not spoken by your generation. And when you grow up all the way and have children of your own, they too will invent their own code in language. You will not share it. Different communities divided by ethnicity may also use different vernaculars within the same region. So it's not just about where you live, but if you belong to a certain community, you may have different expressions than another. I'll give you a few examples. Basically, what all that means is that when we're at home or when we're down home, we may sound different than we do at school or work. Give you an example. Here is just the example of greetings. Hello without a vernacular. Let us imagine that the Queen, who speaks no vernacular, as previously stated, would say that to someone. But I don't know if you're a fan of movies from the 1980s. If you ever Netflix Fast Times at Ridgemont High, dude, is what, believe it or not, that's the now late middle-aged actor Sean Penn when he was a teenager, playing a guy who was a pothead named Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. When he greeted his friends, he said, dude. I guarantee you the Queen of England does not say dude when she sees people she likes to have lunch with. American regionalisms in language are forms of the American vernacular. I give you the example of "Hey y'all," an expression you might hear from SEC fans who are meeting to tailgate. And then where I'm originally from, Brooklyn, it's not impossible to imagine that if I saw the person in the next photograph, that I might just say to her, "Dual, dual." I greet some of my friends like that. Although I must admit, I never wear those outfits, and I would never wear Ugg boots with a short skirt. I just find that very tacky. That said, if I knew her, I might say dual, and I would say it not like doll, but dual, because that's how Brooklyn rolls. Generational differences in vernacular expressions and levels of discourse. As I said before, your grandparents probably had a different slang growing up and being a young couple than than you do now. Um, you would expect a younger group of people like these three guys maybe to greet each other by saying "yo," but the people in this next picture, they might say "good evening." Um, Class differences in vernacular expressions. Howdy, might be what this working class rodeo writer would say. But a New York socialite might greet her friends, not the way I just said duel. She might say darling. Um, so class differences too. And there are other communities that produce their own vernacular expressions. A lot of people will say have a blessed day, but that comes from the community of American Protestant churches as a rule. Um, it's not particularly something that you hear if you're working for Facebook's campus. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, is pretty unlikely to say "Have a blessed day" to his employees. It's just not his vernacular. Likewise, the expression that I've heard down here but not elsewhere is "that dog won't hunt," as a way of saying that idea goes nowhere. But unless you have actually gone hunting with actual hunting dogs, that might be confusing. We all belong to community groups that invent their own manner of saying things. Um, we belong to more than one at any given time. We all belong to multiple groups that contribute to our vernacular. And but in certain rhetorical situations, and I'll get to what that means, we need to sound more formal, professional, or grown up. Just to let you know, it might surprise you that to realize that when I am among friends, I sound less like my professor self and more like Elle Woods from the movie Legally Blonde. I might say this at work: please open your books and consider the assignment. Here is someone who isn't me but looks enough like me to suppose that she is teaching a class. But if I am talking to my girlfriends, I might say, OMG, I am super psyched to see you. And I might be a little more like this outside of my own work. No one is born speaking like a college professor. And likewise, no one is born writing college papers. When you write papers for college classes, you need your prose. To leave your vernacular expressions to the side, it's not that you need to forever abandon them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're part of the fun of living. But when you're writing at the higher level of discourse in academia, there needs to be a different level of discourse, a different level of formality and exactitude toward grammatical expression. Um, One of the first rules of good writing is to consider one's audience and what is called the rhetorical situation. We've already talked in this class about what the word rhetoric means. Rhetoric has different situations. The rhetorical situation largely depends on the objective of the work being written and the audience to whom it is speaking. Um, so Eminem, for instance, finds himself in one rhetorical situation, occupying a large stadium and rapping in his own particular and idiosyncratic manner, which requires a lot of skill. But he's going to need an entirely different skill set and is in an entirely different rhetorical situation than the chair of the board of a corporation. That person may even be in the same stadium on a different day, talking to a large number of shareholders. Um, but it would be inappropriate for him to consider his audience in the same way as Eminem surely considers his. Um, like like students in college who have different rhetorical situations in their lives when you're speaking to your friends or writing a paper. You have to prepare to address your audience and consider the purpose, the objective of the assignment. And so, if you examine your own rhetorical situation, uh, you're writing in this class, to a general college audience. Every single paper, I will ask you to write to a general college audience participating in the culture of academia, one imagines of your audience, with a college level vocabulary and a college level of formality. And this will require you to raise your level of discourse from the level where you address your friends and family. Raising one's level of discourse involves the following, among potentially other things: changing informal vernacular expressions to clearer, high-level discourse expressions. Being very careful to use correct grammar, as many vernacular expressions are not appropriate for college paper. I give one example. Where are the football fans in the off season? Is an appropriate level of discourse that one could put in a college paper. It suggests simply a very straightforward expression. I wouldn't need to know slang, and it doesn't sort of change the meaning of a previous existing word as the second expression here does. Where are the football fans hanging at in the off season? Hanging, first of all, is appropriate when you're talking about hangers in your closet in a non-vernacular manner, but we don't even hang out, particularly in college papers, and we certainly don't hang at, because that is a familiar expression. It's less formal. It's vernacular. It doesn't quite belong in a paper. And reading texts that use more formal language every day is a very good way to raise one's level of discourse. You probably already started to accomplish this if you do all the college readings that are assigned to you throughout your stay at Southeastern Louisiana. But additionally, if you want to raise your level of discourse, likewise, if there is anyone in this class who has what's called foreign language interference, meaning English is not your first language, you're good enough with English to enter college, and congratulations for that. But some of the levels of expression in writing are a little bit alien to you. Well, one of the best ways to learn how to write at the appropriate level would be to read a newspaper every day. Not any newspaper. Some are written at for an 8th grade reading level, and you really want to be at a college reading level. The better ones I would recommend would include, not limited to, The Advocate, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, and The Washington Post. I have told students in other settings, if you read a newspaper article from one of these particular newspapers every day, it could be on any topic you like. It could be sports, it could be cars, it could be fashion. You will already be eliminating some of the foreign language interference and will understand the level of discourse at which a college student should be writing his or her papers. Finally, just a thought: when you leave college, and let's say, like this young man picture here, you are considering entering the job market, going on a job interview, one of the first things that professors are going to look for, or excuse me, not professors, employers are going to be looking for, your ability to sound like someone who graduated from college, to write and to sound like someone who graduated from college. Writing in a higher level of discourse is a mark of what it means to be a college graduate. It is one of the things that your future employers will be looking for. And this is the time to develop the ability to change levels of discourse with ease. It's not that you give up your vernacular expressions ever, but rather you put them to the side when you need to, so that you can operate in a more formal public square form of discourse. We will be doing exercises in class associated with changing things to different levels of discourse, and you will have a quiz about this. As always, I remain available for additional questions you may have via email, during office hours, or in person.